Right, welcome back to the Health, Wealth, and Sex podcast. And today we're going to be talking about eating to thrive. So, first of all, of course, we get a little bit of a mini update. So, dude, how is prep going for the first show ever?
Well, it's been about a year since I ever felt hungry, and this week I have legitimately felt hungry in between my meals, and it was like meeting an old friend. Not a particularly good old friend, but
A bit
those
catching a little
feelings
bit
have
hard. It's
returned.
not that.
Yeah, it's so that was
Appetite's back.
interesting.
It's
Yeah,
genuine hunger.
appetite's back, food's going in well. Really hungry for my food. Got to get my timings right. So it's the first week I felt hungry, but it's always a good sign. Something needs managing, something that I'm used to, I
Have you
enjoy.
have you
But
thought about leveraging semiglutide as an appetite suppressant?
I haven't, because it's not something I've ever used nor wanted to. Obviously heard good things about it, but especially at this point, I'm happy just to almost suck
Mm.
it up, play with it. I think as well, being so far out, I'm quite a big proponent of, yes, pulling down for a period of time, and when things get a little bit exciting, in inverted commas, almost putting food back in for a period,
Mm.
very lightly, sort of resetting again. And this sort of I don't try to get to Everest, the top of Everest, in one go. I base camp, I sort of pace myself, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, that's almost how my season will be structured because so we had the pro qualifier early on, or the regional early on, sorry, to do the first pro qualifier like 4 months later.
Mm.
So maybe it's 3 months. So in that period of time, we can bring me back up to maintenance calories, fill me out, perform in training, probably make some small progressions, but stay tight, really tight, so that
Yeah,
when we maybe 4 weeks out drop back into a deficit, um, it's a
I
better
find it brings my
condition
best luck.
with
Yeah,
more size, a fresher look, that kind of thing. So this will be quite a linear diet for me, like a 10
yeah.
prep,
I
no
like it.
no
Yeah, the
repeats,
begin
no
fill
deload.
approach always works really well. I find that when I sort of continually dig and then fill and dig and then fill, the look up to a point gets better and better.
Yeah,
You seem to respond really well to training. You seem to respond really well to food. And it's like I say, as long as you know when to pull out, so to speak, as long as you know not to keep pushing and when to fill back up, to like sort of bank your winnings and bank your gains, so to speak,
yeah.
it's a great strategy.
Yeah, I used to find I prepped myself for the first 5 or 6 shows. And what I used to do was when I'd hit a new weight low,
Yeah.
that'd also be the night before, I'd be at like my hungriest.
Yes.
And then I'd drop like a kilo or something.
Yeah.
I'd get a really light weigh in. And on that day, I would probably then, because I was lighter, probably just double my carbohydrate intake
Yeah.
for the day. And what I find the next day is that I weighed pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Appetite had gone down and I started trending down again. And the reason why I did that was what was happening was when I hit that new low and I was like, oh, yeah, we'll go another day. Nothing happened. And then nothing
Exactly.
happened. So, what I imagine was happening was I was down regulating expenditure left, right, and center. That wasn't a time when I would have tracked steps, I would have done fixed cardio. So probably hanging off the stair mill, instead of standing up straight,
Yeah.
walking around less, sitting more, talking slow, everything, and that probably, again, with hindsight, that strategy then probably got me into a little bit better performance metrics.
Yes. I
So
think with all of this stuff, it comes down to experience, doing it a lot. And like you've just said there, I was used to be terrible for needing to tough it out, to think, no, look, if I've got this result now, imagine another 2 days of really going for it. What a good spot I'll be in then. And like you say, it never paid off. The time when it got a little bit sticky, if I got out of there, allowed myself to recover somewhat, it worked an absolute treat. And this idea of paying attention to your biofeedback and not letting not letting this gremlin
Mm.
take over and want to push further.
And I suppose the caveat there is that you have a sufficient timeline. So
Yes.
especially the first time you compete or attempt to get exotically lean, for whatever reason, give yourself like a 20 to 24 week timeline to allow for that, those periods at maintenance. Whereas like what I'm doing, 10-week that prep is quite unusual. My start point was very good. I was on extremely high calories, but I wasn't fat. And I was on cruise control. So we'd given my body a rest from the gear. So obviously was in a pretty relaxed position. I didn't want to eat. I was able to drop off weight pretty much at £5 a week for the first sort of 3 weeks, I think, of proper prep. And the 2 weeks prior were Christmas, which were off. I think I dropped like 10 pounds just by eating closer to appetite.
Yeah, I think it's all about having that good, like you say, you were in a good starting point. You're in a really good position. And yes, you had a shorter time frame, but you didn't need a longer one. I see
I
again
might
working with
do. We'll find out, won't we?
well they say that might change. But yeah, again, there's still especially with lifestyle people, I've got a holiday in 8 weeks, you know, can you get me ready? And it's like, I can get you
Define ready.
better. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, define ready precisely. And just this very, short-term mentality. You know, we need to be set.
yeah,
One phase needs to be leading into another, but yeah,
yeah. I've had a lot of with my January uptake, a lot of pushback on people. Oh, I'm only losing £1 a week. They're now 6 weeks in, they're £6 down, not hungry, performing well, enjoying their training, everything like that. I've had sort of the conversations where it's like, how long do you think I'll need to get to X, Y, and Z? And I'm like, probably at least 6 months if we do everything right. And they're like, oh, I was
yeah,
thinking like 12. And I'm like,
yeah,
nah. And realistically, your adherence won't be 100%. But if it is, I promise you'll be there. And they're still like mind blown. It used to get stopped in the street sometimes by kids, like in Vienna, the Turkish kids, really good kids. And they were always interested in the gym and muscles. It's
yeah,
like
yeah,
pretty big in their culture. And they'd be like, oh, bro, brew, because it's bruder, brew. That, how long you train? How long you train?
yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, 2 decades. And they're like, oh.
Oh, yeah. I think
Couple of years.
here's just to mirror what you're saying. So I've just I literally had a check-in this morning, and I'll give a little shout out to Rob if he listens, because I know he listened to the last one. Well, he's lost 30 pounds. But how long's he's lost 30 pounds? He looks like a different man. But how long's it taken Rob to lose 30 pounds? 30 weeks. Do you know what I mean? So
Pretty fucking aggressive, to be honest.
yeah, well, precisely this is it. And we've digged and we've filled and we've digged and we've filled, and he's been an absolute trooper. But so 30 weeks, and that's a good rate of loss, so he looks like a new man.
Mm.
So it's very hard for people to understand what goes into it. And again, I've got a friend back in Manchester. He started going to the gym. He's my age, so he's 43, and he's going. Listen, He's going once a week. He's going once a week to the gym, and that's all he can do. He says, "Hey, I'm noticing big improvements." So I reckon he said, "I reckon it'll take me about 6 months before I'm pretty much looking like you." He goes, "How long have you been training for?" It's like 25 years. It's like it's just a lack of experience. I think sometimes I wish it was
Yeah.
that
But,
easy.
you gotta be realistic, and
Yeah,
that's what good coaching looks like as well. Don't overpromise and underdeliver.
other way
If
around.
anything, we underpromise and overdeliver.
Yeah,
And that's always been the way. So segue then into the topic of the podcast, eating to thrive. And both you and I connect in the sense that we agree that the way that you eat should allow you to thrive across all performance metrics, which I define, as the topic, as the podcast title suggests, I define that as your health and well-being, your overall vitality and energy levels, cognitive function and performance, being able to show up at work, as well as your training performance, so you can actually make progress in the gym and walk out of it, feeling energized, and feeding into your relationship that you've got enough energy and vitality at the end of the day to contribute and be present, after, being a high performing individual at work, smashing a training session, winning the day essentially. And how do we eat in order to do that? Because there's a lot of confusion around what a physique development diet looks like. We can blame many bodybuilders for eating fucking egg whites, oatmeal, chicken and rice and broccoli, etc. That's not how we're going to thrive. It's a limited variety of foods, and they do that because they knew that would get them shredded, and it worked for them before, and they repeat that pattern. We all learn patterns. So the patterns that I'm proposing are to tick those boxes across, all your life's performance metrics.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was watching a YouTube clip yesterday, and it's a guy I hugely respect. I won't name him, but he was 50. He's 50 years old, and he's in great shape. And he said, I love bodybuilding, but the reason I'll eventually retire is because I can't eat chicken and rice 6 times a day anymore. And he's a great, but I thought, but you don't have to. Like, kind of that's I love the lifestyle, but I couldn't do that. I wouldn't. If that's what it took, I wouldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
No. On my inner child therapy, which is something I'm having, I don't know if I told you already, but I'm exploring some inner child work with a therapist. It's been quite cathartic. But we visited Happy Childhood, and she'll ask questions throughout, and she's sort of trying to build a picture, I suppose, of things to use to help me connect with a happy child. Like this week, I'm doing crosswords because I am an adult, but fed into some things I liked as a kid, and got a sketchbook for drawing again. Just it's also me time and downtime.
Yeah, sure.
It's great. Anyway, she was exploring a lot about food, a lot of questions. Did little Thom, was he picky about food? And I'm thinking, do you think I'm picky about food? Like, do you think I punish myself with it? Like, I was like, I elevate every meal I've got, because I've got cooking skills from my previous career, and I understand nutrition. I can build high quality, highly palatable meals that serve me in every way that I prefer to anything else.
Yes.
Right? It has to be a very good restaurant quality meal or sushi, which I can't make myself realistically, to actually have me go out and eat,
Yeah, I think it's funny. I mean, when I speak to people, I say to them before we get into anything, and it sounds so basic, eat foods you enjoy eating. And sometimes it can be an epiphanous moment for people. Like, you know what you want to do? Good quality whole foods that you enjoy. Eat those. Whole foods that you're not so keen on. Don't eat those. It's like kind of really, it's like, yeah, look, if you fill your diet with foods you actually gravitate towards, you actually look forward to eating, your diet doesn't become a punishment. It doesn't be something you're inflicting upon yourself. Sure, you need to have, most of us are doing it to be active, so it needs to be good quality food, carbohydrates, good fats. I'm a big proponent of fats, and protein adequately in place. But heck, if that's your parameters and that's all you've got to build your diet around to some degree, lean into foods that you turn up for every day.
Yeah. I get a variety of food throughout the day because I get a bunch of meals, 6 meals or something like that. So I tend to follow a fairly repetitive pattern, with the exception maybe of the evening meal, because I like that pattern, and I'll get bored of a meal and I'll change it. for something like that. But what you touched on there, like a couple of times, most important thing is that predominantly this is a whole foods based diet. That means sort of single source foods, so minimal or no processing involved. All right, let's bear in mind that something like white rice could be defined as processed. Yeah. So when we're then like obviously preparing our own food, we also require to some degree a skill set, and great kitchen equipment can help with that. Things like air fryers, active fryers, poaching pans, micro, like anything that aids you in that sort of skill set. And then we don't want to be shy about adding flavor. So, you know, sweet, salt, acid, heat, right? So, you know, my rice is seasoned with distilled white vinegar, loads of salt, and I use extra virgin macadamia nut oil on it, which gives it a little buttery flavor, but it's a great healthy fat. So, okay, everything about that serves me. Even seasoning with the vinegar acts as a glucose disposal agent. Believe it or not, it helps with the nutrient partitioning. So, yeah, I'm going to have that with some beautifully poached eggs from my poaching pan, which I like sriracha on, so flavor. And then I'll probably eat some grass-fed ground beef with that because it digests really well. But I'd prefer a fillet steak. Just doesn't digest quite as well, probably because I don't chew it as much. I eat so many things with a spoon that requires such minimal chewing that probably the weakest part of my body is my chewing ability. Like I could be defeated by three almonds, three raw almonds would defeat me. I wouldn't be able to chew anymore. Yeah.
Well, you make a good point there as well. Is this idea of paying attention to biofeedback. So, for example, Alex loves oats. Oats don't love Alex. Alex. So Alex, I'd eat that all day, mixed it in protein powder, and I like that stuff. Oats destroy me.
Yeah.
They make me feel terrible. The digestion. They even make my throat swell up a little bit.
Be allergic.
And yeah, I think so. But I tell you what was funny, and again, because I never say this, putting myself on a pedestal like, oh, why don't people recognize biofeedback? I ate oats for years, years and years and years, and I'd feel rough after breakfast. And then one day I started having eggs for breakfast. Hey, I feel great this morning.
Yeah.
And it took ages for the penny to drop. But it's like, I don't get on well with grains. Like, I'm not following a magical diet. It's like they literally don't particularly agree with my body. And so again, gravitate towards foods you like that like you back as well. Because
so leaning into this sense of whole foods that serve you. And one aspect of that you're essentially saying is if it causes you digestive distress, then you don't need to lean into it at all. It doesn't need to be a whole food. There's no must-haves. And then we see probably the best physique outcomes. Generally, people thrive on a high protein diet. So, and what does that look like? Like we can throw out this sort of 2 grams per kilo mark, just as a ballpark figure. Then we want to start assembling carbohydrates from micronutrient dense sources, so fruits and vegetables that you tolerate well, because fruits you'll generally tolerate really, really well, but vegetables to different degrees can be irritants. So if you think about the cabbage family and what that does to your digestive system, you'll understand, right? Or cauliflower in some cases, right? If you digest those and tolerate them well and enjoy them, then fantastic. After that, we'd probably start to build in typically more fiber dense carbohydrates like your oats. But again, you don't tolerate them well, but you could have spelt, you could have tapioca, you could have, I suppose we could talk about brown rice, but we'll save that for later. But like brown pasta, brown breads, sourdoughs, and so on. Again, trying to avoid processing as much as possible with breads. And then based on demand, how much sort of food the athlete needs and tolerance to the digestion, we're going to start to look at, we've probably maxed out on fiber here and we need more food. And so we'll probably lean into white carbohydrates and simple sugars. And underpinning all of that is sufficient healthy fats, which is probably about 0.6, 0.3 to 0.6 grams of fat per kilo, typically. But we tend to go with more than that for great cognitive function, particularly natural. So enhanced athletes get away with very low fat diets because they're enhanced. Everything that a low fat diet does to your hormonal system in terms of tanking it is offset by the exogenous hormone administration. So it's crucially important, I would say, to protect high quality healthy fat sources, cold pressed omega-3 fish oil, avocados, 100% nut butters, extra virgin macadamia nut oil, avocado oil if you like the taste, high quality extra virgin olive oil. Those kind of fats are added to your food predominantly. You can pay for like golden yolk eggs, grass-fed beef, wild salmon if you want to make sure that the foods that you eat also maximize the fatty acid profile benefits. So we've got to have those two in place, you know, your quality protein sources, high protein diet, and sufficient what I would call healthy or anti-inflammatory fats. And then we build from there: fruits, vegetables, grains, potatoes, sweet potatoes, and then into like white carbohydrate products and simple sugars around the peri-workout window as well, which is glucose.
Yeah, to mirror everything you said, I mean, I've faffed and fiddled with that for a long period. For a long time, I did a gram per pound of protein, and I did very high carbohydrate, very low fat. It worked fine, but funnily enough, I always felt it's again ridiculous looking back. I always felt something was missing. Could never quite put my finger on it. And equally, if I ever did moderate protein, relatively high fat, and low carbohydrates, it always felt as if something was missing. I couldn't put my finger on it. And then one day, after 20 years or so, what I realized was that having a pretty decent balance of protein, carbohydrates, and fats, that feeling of that something was missing wasn't there anymore.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it was, it's staring me right in the face that when I actually had enough of all of them, I didn't necessarily malign or deify any one macronutrient. My body felt great. Cognitively, I was good. Performance wise, I was good. I even, well, I started to try and separate them out, maybe having more carbohydrates around my work. In the end, every meal I have is mixed macro, containing carbohydrates, fats, and protein. I don't try to play around with it any more than that. And I also, my diet currently, not that I'm any poster boy for this, is about 200 grams of protein, 200 grams of fat, and about 350 grams of carbohydrates. And I think sometimes people can think that having a diet that's relatively high in fat and carbohydrates can skew body composition. But again, from my experience, I've not found this to be the case.
No,
I've only found benefits.
Calories will
Calories.
always win that equation.
Yeah.
Some of the things we talk about there are, for in terms of underlying principles of gut health, therefore adherence into the high protein diet. And I think it's quite interesting really to understand that we're all very unique individuals, and there's probably a spectrum that we can thrive on, and very few people are going to thrive on, like, I don't know, a strict vegan diet, and very few people are going to thrive on a carnivore diet, although they may benefit from it for some period of time as
Initially,
plant-based. But what we really exist on, a spectrum with all these things. So whether it's your macronutrient splits, or whether you prefer a higher protein diet, or a more plant-based diet with some animal protein, or whatever it is, we'll all thrive somewhere on that spectrum. So you have to sort of fact find. So if you marry yourself to a template, you don't listen to your body and make adjustments, then you won't ever be optimal. You won't thrive.
Yeah, I think I fell down when in my very early days. I fell for a multitude of gurus. You know, they sounded very convincing. You know, they were the ones with the they knew my body better than I knew my body. They could tell me what to do, and thank God, because that meant I didn't have to think for myself or, listen to my biofeedback. But as you get more confidence, you realize that, one size doesn't fit all, and that our
Mm,
bodies were all individual, and that I can actually tell when my body's working well off a certain sort of fuel and when it's not. And I don't need, Gary Taubes or anybody like that to tell me how to eat, because experientially you find out for yourself. But it does take time, and you have to be
yeah.
confident, I suppose. That comes through experience.
Yeah, yeah. And like the way that we coach doesn't really sell anything. We don't
No.
sell rapid transformations or a particular diet strategy. What we say is we're going to give you essentially a whole foods based diet, and we're going to sort of establish your calories, maintain, manage performance metrics, and toggle those calories depending on the body composition needs. And that doesn't really sell. We need a radical quick fix in order to sell in sort of volume, but also the turnover is high. So it's quite difficult, I think, for people to come out in the fitness industry and just really say, look, it is a lot more simple than you think, and doing this consistently will yield a better body composition. They could not, it was not cost effective. They could not make rats obese prior to the explosion in food processing, the ability to play with vegetable oils and break them down into constituent parts to be used in corn as well to create textures and so on, so that they could assemble foods and then add sugar flavoring. So you've got these processed combinations of fat and sugar. Feeding the rats whole foods, wouldn't do it, couldn't do it, couldn't force feed them enough. Now feeding them these, this is all covered in a really interesting book called The Hungry Brain, by the way, if anyone wants to read. But the rats fed ice cream and cereal and soda and so on. They got real obese real easy, and they kept getting obese. And that's all to do with your reward pathways and how they'll potentially override your normal hunger signaling, which is regulated really well by a whole foods diet. Now, the interesting thing as well was that when they removed the hypothalamus from the rats, i.e., they basically cut that reward pathway, and they fed the rats the highly processed combinations of fat and sugar, they didn't overeat. Their appetite regulating hormones were able to regulate that. So it's like a reward pathway. And if you're into your neuro-linguistic programming, you'll start to recognize those reward pathways. Oh, McDonald's. Well, where's that come from? I haven't had McDonald's in 7 years. There's a pretty strong childhood reward pathway probably connected to that. And, because of previous preps and how I'd do like a savage diet with a pizza and ice cream once a week and so on. Domino's pizza has always been like a pretty profound reward pathway. I was starving hungry, and it was my fucking reward. And in a couple of years ago, when I had a mindset coach, I had to walk past Domino's like 5 times a day or 6 times a day or so, because it was next to my house in Vienna. And I mean, in the off season, they fucking all knew me by name, right? But but when I went past it, we had like a little mantra, because that reward pathway was always there and I could smell it. So as I went past, it was like, we've got to make a strong one. So I'd have to say out loud, big boys with big goals don't eat Dominoes, right? And it fucking worked, because it shut down that reward pathway straight away and set me on a new pathway, and I had to reinforce it every fucking day. But I remember that, and I think just reward pathways generally really interesting. It helps you understand actually some of your cravings and desires around food, and awareness tends to be key when we're looking to change behavior.
I think I think one of the worst things you can do from a dietary setup and point of view is have this carrot dangling at the end of a week. And again, a lot of these popular diets that sell very well will have a lot of arbitrary strict rules. You know, Monday to Friday do this, then Saturday go for it. This is your refeed or whatever. Again, I've had people who've followed something similar, and on their day that they're allowed to, be more liberal, they're like crack addicts. They're gone. I mean, and they struggle to rein it in. One day turns into two, and it's like whoa, whoa, whoa. It's like you were saying, it doesn't sell what we're saying. But if you eat a predominantly whole foods diet of foods that you enjoy, and you don't destroy yourself through the week eating a certain way that's just punishing, you don't need that reward. You don't need that carrot at the end. But if you set up that paradigm, I don't care how psychologically tough you are, you will crack, you will break when you set it up like that.
Yeah, I'm pretty well managed in terms of like appetite and food and refeeds and everything by Joe. But if it was like auto-regulating, a diet, and I was incredibly hungry one evening, and yeah, I was on track for a goal or something like that, I'd just pick another whole foods meal. Be like, right, I'm going to have a big bowl of oats, something satisfying. I'd have that, because the likelihood of me eating 5,000 calories in one sitting and really undermining my diet is zero. I'm going to eat, even if I sex it up with some peanut butter or something, like it's probably going to be 800 calories, and it's probably, based on my biofeedback, 800 calories I could do with at that point, just knowing my body. And so I think sometimes when we're, purposefully starving ourselves, it's like, if I stop doing this, so I'm going to break tonight, I'm going to cheat, I'm going to make my decision. It doesn't have to be the worst possible thing. Just acknowledge you're unusually hungry and prepare yourself another high quality meal. And if you know how to cook, and you will not regret that meal.
No.
You'll not have shame or guilt around that meal. You won't have digestive distress for 2 days after that meal, and you'll wake up the next day still on track. I guarantee you won't weigh in heavy.
Not when you're hungry and your body
you'll probably
wants that
just weigh
food.
in the same, and then, as I say, your performance for the next 2 days will more than adequately keep you on track, because it'll be a performance increase.
Yeah, I you'll probably see this too. I see a lot of people equating suffering and starving with progress. They get this idea of, I need to feel ravenously hungry, brutally hungry, because this is equating to success and improved body composition and the scale going down. And often that's, for me, the bit where the wheels are starting to come off. You've gone, like we talked to at the very, very start, that's the bit where you're going too far. You maybe want to feel that hunger pinch, and okay, I'm in a deficit. But when it's getting to the stage where you are just incredibly hungry and you're saying, that's my sign of success, that's my barometer for success, yeah, you don't want to be in that place.
So when we're in that place, there's fatigue, food focus, there's a lot going on, and that doesn't lend itself to success, and it often lends itself to extreme failure if you're stubborn about it in all the other areas of your life that are important. So your relationship will suffer because you don't have the emotional capacity or energy for it. You're fixated on food and how tired you are. You won't be able to be present as well, because the hunger and fatigue will be distracting. Your performance at work will decline. And you can kid yourself that it's not, but it will. And that might not bite you in the ass the moment that you stop dieting. You might see that down the line, that the work that you didn't do has now left you behind, or the resentment built up in the relationship for your behavior hasn't been forgiven and we carried forward. So we need to think about all of these things in much more subtle phasing when somebody wants to maintain their quality of life and their performance. So if the goal is fat loss, it's planned out, It's a sustainable rate of loss. It's pulled at a certain point where we start to see metrics start to slide, and we can hold back, and then we can move into that deficit again, and sometimes external stresses will come in that will require more attention, therefore more food for performance and dealing with that. So that, those phases can be called, broadly speaking, maintenance. We don't have to skew off in the wrong direction at all. Just have to eat sufficiently to, restore ourselves or perform in the situation required. So demand goes up, food's going to need to go up. Focus on recovery can also go up. And then, we've got these muscle accumulation phases. Again, going to be quite slow. And once an individual's gotten sufficiently lean for the first time, that can begin. And that means titrating calories up as demand increases. And you can put more demand on the body because you've got more food to recover from. So you can do more training, recover better, and so on, until that person's on relatively high calories, performing exceptionally well, and they've held a great body composition. And that's what you did really successfully, 30 pounds of clean muscle.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the whole thing just needs to be managed very, very carefully. I tend to find that people, they can actually diet relatively well. They can get the fat off because they'll associate success with suffering, and they'll stick it out for a little while, and they'll get some weight off. They never have an exit strategy, though. They don't know how to get out of that end fat loss point where the wheels fall off. They say, I'm done. So then they just rebound and add it all back in. They don't know how to skillfully navigate building up calories again and maintaining a form of body composition. And again, like you were saying, that's ultimately what I did. Is I got peeled, and then I watched what was happening. I added in food on a needs basis over a long period of time, and it was, months and months and months.
Like 100 calories a week on average, wasn't
it was about 100 calories a week, and sometimes it was 100 calories every other week on a needs basis based on data that I was looking at and body composition. And I just did that for a long period of time. And yeah, the quote unquote people say, wow, that's magic. And it's like, no, it's OCD. No, it's bodybuilding.
Potentially, because we've got to have a great relationship with food going into a diet phase. We've got to maintain that, and we've got to bring that out with us. And what we don't want for the general population really is to have to auto-regulate. Well, they're not. That's not auto-regulation. Let's be clear. We want them to be able to auto-regulate to some degree, and that's going to come off great eating principles. And appetite should normalize relatively quickly. Hunger should level off from an extreme diet within about 4 weeks of eating whole foods to sort of maintenance calories. So you will be extremely hungry once you've got exotically lean, and that won't go away even if you overeat. So your two options are: you can be decreasingly hungry, but hungry for 4 weeks post-diet, but get super fat, or you can have the hunger and be in a good body composition, and so you don't have to diet again immediately. And yeah, so eating to thrive, it's very much a non-aggressive approach to body composition change. It very much is for the long term, but that's what's going to work for the majority of the population. Now, bodybuilder, like my day set up, I've got the elite treadmill in the living room. I can work from my workstation for periods of the day. I can go to the gym, and I can cook here the majority of the time. So my day is very much set up for getting extremely lean while still performing. If you see what I mean. Now, if I threw a child into the mix, or I wasn't running my own company, and couldn't dictate my hours and so on, it's much more challenging. So the likelihood that you can diet extremely fast and get extremely lean without compromises is zero.
It's absolutely right, and I work with a lot of lifestyle people, and there's full recognition that Whereas they have, they have goals, physique goals, and they're very serious about them. They're very serious with the training. They also have jobs and families. Most of them want to stay with their partner and not, and get on with their children. So it's this idea of, look, if you push too hard on this avenue, other areas of life are going to suffer. You need to take this slow, cautious approach. You need to manage your expectations and be able to live to fight another day. Because if you push too hard, you may get a short-term reward, but other areas of your life will burn. So it has to be this way. And I'll see people, and in fact, it's funny. I rarely have to motivate people to stick to the diet. A lot of times, especially with guys, I have to hold them back. But I can do another week. I can do. We can increase the deficit, and it's not about, come on, you can do this. I had a tiger. It's more, don't turn the screw. We're not turning the screw. We're living here for a little while, but I want it to go faster. No, no, it's fine. This is a good rate of
Yeah.
loss. Like,
And the reason for that message is faster equals failure and a rebound.
yeah.
So, and I think that's probably a good note to wrap up on. I think we've covered all the basics of how to eat well, the skill set required. It's not, you do need to acquire that skill set. Let's not be beat around the bush about that. A whole foods diet with zero cooking skills does suck. So I think we've covered all of that, and also, what we think that means, and how it's important to deliver that in the sort of the lifestyle community that we largely operate in, and the difference there, acknowledging that your lifestyle is set up differently to a pro bodybuilder, that you won't get the same outcomes in the same time. You don't have the same body, quite frankly, you don't have the same genetics.
No.
So manage your expectations, stay the course and stay consistent, and living your greatest life in a body you love will indeed be achievable.